we're cooking up another CIRF report, and out of last week's shit show, maybe not the shit show that everybody is hoping for, or aka the storm. But anyway, there was a lot of, unexpected events and craziness in clown world. So out of all that rises this week the Phoenix. All right, so we're talking about January 12th through January 18th, 2023. And with that, let's go surfing the cosmic waves together, huh? All right, here's our summary slide. And already you can notice that we're expanding. I can't promise that this expansion or this addition is going to be a permanent fixture in each CIRF report, but I can say that when we talk about the numerology and when we talk about where I'm getting the number 8 from, it'll become very obvious in the astrology, and I promise your chin will hit the floor like mine still is. I'm still speechless on the numbers from the astrology that we're going to talk about. So anyway, number 8, very prominent, and it's the achiever. It measures life by the goals it reaches. It's racing to the top of the ladder. Great sense of fortitude. So great power forward and up. And then just so happens the I-Ching is 46. That's the blue circle. By the way, the numerology I put into the circles. We're trying to triangulate so that I can show you where the greatest influence is, the biggest energy to expect. And then because the secret of life is in your reactions, we're going to do a whole separate triangulation for the solution or from recommended behaviors to maximize this energy. All right, so let's start with the triangulation of the influence. We have the numerology in red. That's the new one. I can't promise this is going to be in every single week or every single CIRF report, but this week it's big. And so that's big, and it matches perfectly with the I-Ching 46 that says pushing upward. And that is supported in the astrology by Mars and Mercury are currently retrograde. This week, they're going to be going direct. And that is going to be part of the numerology, by the way. But that forward movement is also upward because there's a grand air trine and mind is up. That influences towards the upward motion. But the biggest one I think of is the Sun and Pluto getting a conjunction, sort of that annual death and rebirth. And so we get that rising Phoenix effect where, I thought that was a cliff and it feels like the world's ending, but then it circles again and then life starts rising up again out of the ashes. Well, the shit show was last week. Now, probably not the shit show that we're all expecting, but definitely across all sorts of realms, from politics to airlines, even sports, but even in my own personal life, it was fairly shit show. I have an example of the Uranus shit show where our smoke detectors went out. That's a perfect example of Uranus, where you have a technology that just suddenly just expires and goes out, just beeps all the time. You can't figure out why, so you just got to replace them. Well, that happened this week. Let's see. Where was I? So then the Dreambot, get this. It's not just ascension, although the first word is that, but it's also descending. So it's ascension, descension. It's a continuum, up or down. And then the other meme is 3D reality. This one is all about, everything we talked about, but especially the Sun and Pluto together. And so that'll be interesting. I can't wait to show you the Dreambot. And then the astrology. We got the biggest things probably are that Mars and Mercury that are ending up in an inconjunct. So adapting to each other, they're both turning direct, station direct, and we'll talk about those different times. And then the grand air trine, I think that's pretty big, but also the Sun conjunct Pluto is huge. And I think that's where we're going to get all that together. Behold the rising Phoenix with a very high congruency score. So let's do this. Ready? And now the time is at hand. I mentioned last week we're probably going to be hitting 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, and boy, we've got really freaking close. So it's time now for you guys to decide, what are we going to do for our 2,000 subscriber celebration? Are we going to do a live show? What do you want? Do you want a live show where we can do a Q&A? Do you want a certain kind of video, maybe a reset of the surfing intro videos, kind of old and stale? I don't know. What do you guys feel like getting out of this celebration? All right. The winner of this week's comment is Clarissa from Brazil. I'm already feeling this energy. Interesting that today I reacted in a different way as I usually do. Very interesting, and I bet you might have practiced that reaction. No? Maybe? And I think that's what these surf reports are all about, getting you ready for your reaction so you can pre-plan it. And hopefully it helps you, not hurts you. Cheers from Brazil. Thank you. And thank you, Clarissa. Keep us advised. We hear some big things are happening down there, and we don't know what's truth and what's fiction. Also want to mention, on the other platform, the Rumble platform, White Pill Anon says, buckle up, friends. Tensions are not going to majorly let up throughout this year, and we're being trained step by step to bear more and hold and anchor more energy. Whew. Yep. Unfortunately, I think that's right. But this week should be easier to carry that load because it's upward influence, upward energy, which should help. All right, let me get to the DreamBot. I'm going to zoom in for you. And there it is, folks. Ascending, number one word. And what's strange is number two word is basement. So already we have an upward movement, ascending, and then sort of a downward implication or influence, or inference, metaphor. Basement is downward. Then all these reds are either up or down. And I put in segmented lines reality, because our reality is either it's like the tearing. It seems like this DreamBot seems like our reality's tearing apart, and it's not a left versus right. It's a up versus down, ascension versus descension. Almost sounds like heaven and hell, but it also sort of, to me, sounds like, because we're talking about the blue arrows are 3D reality. Tree, river, just things, sky, the things in our reality, things that make up our 3D reality. Well, they're all either ascending or descending. Sort of sounds like Dolores Cannon's New Earth. It sort of, to me, sounds like the Law of One, ascending. No, they don't talk about ascending, but they talk about, Harvest 2, 4D, fourth density. According to them, we're currently in third density. So anyway, all kind of this sounds like the same stuff to me. And I have some linguistic words here, some linguistic sets. Number one, it says Storm 2023, knowing yes. All right. So our storm will be in 2023, according to the DreamBot. Is a DreamBot right? Well, I think it is. Is our interpretation right? That's the question. Have to interpret it correctly. And some of you have a really good gift of interpreting the DreamBot, by the way. So don't hold back. If you've got an intuition about this DreamBot run, put those in the comments below, no matter what platform you're looking at this, from BitChute, Rumble to YouTube. Put that down below and I read all the comments. All right, the next one is linguistic set number 2, cut deal, reality, heavy material. Boy, that sounds like the Storm 2023. It's heavy material. It's stuff, but it's real. It's reality. The reality is the heavy material. And then what I didn't put in was these words at the very top. Ascending basement. So it's kind of that same thing. It's that heavy material. It's bubbling up and rising up Meanwhile, and that's a mental energy, but that reality is rising up in the collective consciousness, right? So that's another form of rising phoenix. It's another form of, we're talking about the I-Ching, pushing upward. It's also a form of Mars going direct in Gemini, which is it's a yang force, but it's very mental because it's Gemini. So anyway, exciting stuff. And one last thing, finger strange. I thought that was interesting how those are together, and that brings on this lucid dreaming. So finger strange is a very lucid dream activity or technique to get into a lucid state. Lucid dreaming is when you are aware that you're dreaming. You're in the dream and you're aware that you're dreaming. And then next higher layers of lucid dreaming is that now you can control the dream. Well, some people use the finger strange technique in order to get lucid. So, for example, you do reality testing and you have to try this in your day-to-day life, in your waking life. You look down at your hand, and if it looks normal, like it always does, then you're probably not in a dream. Well, when you create that habit, your dreams are also habit. So in your dream, you'll start looking at your hand, and lo and behold, it's probably strange. It's strange fingers. Maybe they're really elongated or super fat, or maybe got some problem on it or discoloring or something's weird about your fingers in a dream. They never look normal for some reason. So try that out if you're interested in lucid dreaming. But I am seeing a lot more lucid dreaming across my clients, that I thought also correlates to this sort of tearing apart at reality, either ascending or descending, probably based on karma, but that's above my pay grade. All right. Here's the overview of the astrology for January. We've touched on a lot of this. So you can see inside of the vertical lines is our week here from the 12th to 18th of January 2023. And we have Mars going direct right off the bat. Can't wait to show you the numbers here. And then we got Mercury later. Can't wait to show you the numbers. Then we also have a very important marker here, which is Venus and Uranus in a square that goes perfects on the 15th, right in the middle of our CIRF week. And that will be important because it's a big change to relationships. Also this pressure from being together, togetherness, being accepted, bonding, all that, relating to each other, versus and in conflict with Uranus being free and rebellious and eccentric and different, right? So those are tearing each other apart. And then you got Uranus pushing Venus to be different, all that stuff. And then some more stuff. So let's just go ahead and get into the day by day. I'll darken this just a touch so you can see my cursor better without obscuring the actual map. So big news here. Mars stations, meaning that apparent to Earth, Mars is not moving for a couple days here in Gemini at 8 degrees, 8 minutes of Gemini. Now, some numerologists are going to put these two together, add the 8s together, and you get 1, 6, 16, and then you add those, and you get 7. So the number would be 7. But I disagree with that, I personally, because these are different, much different measurements, degrees of measurement. I'm going to keep the 8s separate, and it's the same number, 8 and 8. 8 degrees and 8 minutes. Now, I want you to take a mental snapshot of that because you're going to see this again later. Hint, Mercury stations exact same numbers. Craziness. And that's why the numerology is important, because a little bit about this, there's a time lag between, there's a transition point, and that's what the station is called. So you've got Mercury and Mars has been going retrograde, and then it stops, apparent to Earth. And when it stops, you've got that extra energy. You got the Mars in Gemini energy that's just sort of pelting Earth. It's just much more because it's not in movement. So it's said that that energy is much more influential. So it happens to be at 8 degrees and 8 minutes of Gemini. And so we've got the upward, the climbing the ladder, yang influence in Gemini. So it's a very mental thing, imagining climbing the ladder, being able to logically create the higher rung, the next thing to go, the achievement that you need to make, the goals that you need. Goals are going to be excellent during this time period. And this time period, Mars is going to be stationed for a couple of days. I'll show you when it stops going station. And you'll have, let's see, this is 2:57 p.m. on January 12th. So goal making is going to be through the roof, and that energy is going up into mine, which is upward. And you'll be able to do that all the way until, let's see, Saturday morning. I think Saturday at like midnight. So like Friday night, if you want to do that. Friday night at midnight is about when, but I'll show you here in a second. And anyway, Mars at 8 and 8. Cool, eh? And it was worth talking about that much because it's that big of an influence and an energetic influence. All right, next biggest is, well, you got Sun and Pluto that is in this sort of rebirth thing. And in this mode, Sun is approaching Pluto. So it kind of looks like a cliff, like you're going to fall off the cliff, or it's just too much. I'm going to die. World that I know is dying, and everything looks gloomy. But by the end of our CIRF week, Sun will conjunct perfectly with Pluto, and then suddenly the rising Phoenix is apparent, or at least the desire to wait for out of the ashes rises the Phoenix. So as that expectation, once that conjunction happens, and that will all be this week. And then the biggest next influence is going to be, and this is tighter actually. So when we start off this week, I'm thinking that Venus square Uranus is going to be a bigger influence than today, or Thursday the 12th, Sun and Pluto. I think the bigger one will be this forced change on relationships and how you relate to others, and maybe how you perceive beauty and creativity and art, or how you apply it. Changes in that regard. This can be also a very like invention kind of a profile if we look at Venus with creativity and art. So you can really get some like a surreal art with this alignment, because Uranus is the inventor too. So you're inventing through artwork, for example, could be one of the, and it's a pressure to do it. So it's like this burning thing, burning discomfort that you've got to get rid of in the form of whatever archetype matches your personality. And so I'm trying to cover a lot of those different archetypes that could be here. But one of them is this, it's a versus. The square is a versus, meaning it's in conflict with each other. So on the one hand, you've got freedom loving, being eccentric, being different, being honored for your difference. Just leave me the hell alone. That's the energy on Uranus. And Venus is quite the opposite. Don't leave me. Let's relate to each other. Let's communicate. Let's harmonize. And so those are at odds with each other. That's a very interesting pressure point, and it can come out in a lot of different behaviors, as you're going to see this next week. Now, one thing I'm going to show you, this is not quite an influence yet, but Venus, as she progresses, is going to conjunct with Saturn. And this is going to put a hardship on the relationship. So now you got a hardship on relationship, and versus just leave me the hell alone as I go into the future, Uranus, or let me create this mad science project that I've got going. So this becomes the more influence. So freedom is more important. And, with hardship and discomfort being caused by relationship, no wonder this pressure outlet's going to be more of just leave me the hell alone. Right? So we're going to cover that in the solution, how to handle that. So stand by. It's going to be a tricky one. And then Friday the 13th, spooky 13th, Friday the 13th. This is also Angie's birthday. So in the comments, give your happy birthday to this awesome person named Angela McCleary. All right. And she, for her birthday, gets a grand air trine. And unfortunately, kind of a big influence on that mental grand air trine is Mercury, but unfortunately he's in a retrograde in a T-square. So the grand air trine is lighting up the mental aptitude, but except for Mercury is thinking in the past and it's kind of conflicted there, and you're seeing maybe what's wrong and what's right together and can't make sense of it. And so maybe foggy, but reversed too. So looking at past thoughts and memories. So that's kind of, that evens each other out. But meanwhile, Mars is really pushing you upward into the mind, into Gemini, into adaptability, everything Gemini, sociable, nice, but with Mars, it's getting something done. It's that yang. It's pushing outward, pushing upward, and so making goals is a great option there, especially with the numerology. And then the sextile with Sun and Neptune. So this used to be our opportunity with, as the Sun was going into its death and rebirth, you can imagine a better life. You can imagine a better scenario. This also can be a double-edged sword. So you can imagine a horrific ending, and it basically just exacerbates whatever attitude or emotional set that you've got with ego, especially if it's fearful. You might end up with fearful or tragic or panicky type of imaginations, fantasies, daydreams. But this is an opportunity. So that implies make sure you're focusing on positive outcomes, positive imaginations for the other side of the rebirth, for ego. So ego can have good things, but ego can't be ruling the roost. And this is your identity and ego and self-rulership, and he or she, your inner child, is going through an overhaul. Deep-seated Pluto, there's your power. And as you get through this, if you welcome in this dark night of the soul that might be hopefully very temporary and subtle and very subconscious, but if you do this activity with an open heart and acceptance, you don't have to go through that emotional turmoil, and you can get the learning on the other side by imagining the outcome that is beneficial for both the soul and the ego. How about that? One last thing. So this Mercury retrograde square Jupiter, because of the direct that Mercury is gonna go to, it never perfects. So that has been said to, disqualify or take away some of the influence that this square has. And so that still leaves us with an emotional and mental conflict with each other. On the one hand, my heart says this. On the other hand, my mind says this. So watch out for that. But let's move on. On Saturday, the 14th. Now, here is where this is 12:35 a.m., January 14th. So just after midnight. This is early morning on Saturday, in that sleep cycle, or Friday night just after midnight. It's 12:35, and this is where Mars begins to move again. You can see 8 degrees, 9 minutes. So what's that going to feel like? Well, that might be hard for people to sleep. We're talking about a Friday night. I don't know what activities that you're doing, but you can probably expect to have a little bit more energy, a little bit more yang, especially mental energy. Maybe some difficulty sleeping. And then we still have the grand air trine, so the mental aptitude stays alive, especially with Mars a part of that. And then we've got 4.5 degrees but before the conjunction happens. And then on this one is the Venus and Uranus square. And this is going to be the climax, actually, the climax of this conflict, this pressure cooker. This is so Saturday, this is around Friday night, midnight. Excuse me. But we're talking about probably while you're sleeping or early when you wake up on Saturday morning. This will be on probably the biggest climax of this energy, which is freedom, independence versus relating and harmonizing. We're still 10 degrees from Venus and Saturn, so not quite a conjunction. But Sunday the 15th, that all changes. So now we're inside of a conjunction with Venus and Saturn. So now relational hardship, relational limitations. If Venus converts over to a money archetype, we're talking about hardship in finances for this period of time with the conjunction. And that together, so relational limitation or hardship on money or relationship or creativity is at odds with and pressurized with being different, being eccentric, inventing technology and freedom. All right. Monday, 2 main alignments that you need to pay attention to are Venus and Saturn together. They're within 7 degrees. And then Sun and Pluto, ego going through its overhaul, is 2 degrees away, square over to Moon in the past. So past ruminations, past emotions, emotional memories, really feeding into the relationships and the pressure to figure all that out. This adds to the lack of trust because you've got a hardship on the Moon. So this is hard emotions and in Scorpio. So Scorpio loves to just ruminate and obsess about the past. So you've got a lot of the past influence coming into a really pessimistic view of relationships and still squared off to Uranus. So what's the net effect of all that? It's uncomfortable to feel, and it takes extra effort to relate to others. So let's just be alone. I'm just going to stay home tonight. Not in a Cancer sort of way, but in a I want freedom sort of way is the way out from this pressure. Remember, that's the influence. It's not the solution here. Tuesday, not a whole lot changes. Mercury is getting ready. You can see at 8 degrees, 11 minutes, still in a retrograde. Can you see what's happening next? On Wednesday, at 8 degrees, 8 minutes of Capricorn, Mercury is station. The station is less in length and in time versus what Mars station was like. That's normal. But this is at, the station happens at 7:12 a.m. This chart is at 8:44 a.m. because Sun and Pluto are in a perfect conjunction at 28 degrees, 14 minutes. But so there's a lot here. This is a big energetic day, big energetic shift here on Wednesday. You got the climax of the Phoenix rising / depends on how you perceive it. The world's ending or the death is nigh. But it's just a rebirth. And once you realize that, there's your Phoenix, rising Phoenix. But you've also got a rising Phoenix in mind, a mental aptitude, because that's what Mercury, a mental aptitude in Capricorn, achieving goals. That's exactly what the numerology is. The numerology is absolutely perfectly in alignment with Mercury in Capricorn and just hanging there at 8 degrees, 8 minutes of Capricorn. So goals and visions and climbing up. It's climbing upward. And that's a mental aptitude as well because of Mercury, communication goals, short-term travel goals, moving upward and forward. So energetically, that happens. Mercury starts its station at 7:12 a.m. on Wednesday at 8 degrees, 8 minutes of Capricorn. Magic. Now, on the same day, Wednesday at 2:15 p.m., this is all Central Time, by the way. I forgot to mention that. But it goes direct. Mercury goes direct at 2:15 p.m. on Wednesday the 18th. So, about half a day. And then moving forward. And you'll see that. Disregard. All right, let's transition into the I-Ching. Pushing upward. New plant life pushes upward through the earth. The emphasis is on upward motion, a movement from obscurity to influence, the growth that is supported by adaptability and the absence of obstacles. The only obstacles that we have is later on in the week, this last CIRF week, with Venus and Saturn. It's the only obstacles we have, hardship there. Line 3 says, obstructions that blocked your path may be falling away. Either an easier way is opening up to you or succeeding in finding the line of least resistance. This is for ego, to get you further in this life and get some better soul learning. Be happy with your present success and continue to push ahead in a positive upward direction. All right, that being said, you can see upward, forward movement is indicated as the influence, but we're going to transition now to the solution. The solution is behavior. It's all behavior and your reaction. Reaction in terms of behavior. So, according to the I-Ching, it's hexagram 7, organized discipline. Well, that seems to imply relationally. So here we go. The use of Mercury direct. Use the influence of Mars-Mercury direct, but watch out for Saturn conjunct Venus and square Uranus, because this makes it very hard for organized discipline or being part of a tribe or group. It's limits on peace and hardships in relationships versus inventing freedom and future rebelliousness. That's that Uranus aspect that are fighting each other in a pressure system square that pushes out against relationships, organization, and the bigger establishment, as in throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's a deep stuff. Might have to read that a couple times. So despite this influence, we must remember that we are in this thing together. Consciously focus on not shooting yourself in the foot in order to spite the collective. Avoid being the martyr. Instead, consciously connect to the right tribe, good leadership, and the faith in the human collective. Part of this ascending, descending, stripping, and tearing is the leadership followership continuum. Okay? And lastly, when balancing strong complementary forces like this, modesty and generosity in the leadership can be magnetic force that keeps the relationships intact. Solidarity is essential for success. And then we put our converter in. We go into the Tropical Astrology, and I chose the Sun-Pluto conjunction as the biggest influence of the entire week based on this rising Phoenix. And that's where it's going to be the strongest. So that is in hexagram 60 and Sidereal Sagittarius. So onward we go with the solution. Hexagram 60 or gate 60 in the Rave Mandala is limitation. The acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. We've heard that before. But line 2 is decisiveness. The understanding of the nature of limitation to accept its restraints when necessary and thus be able to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. Energy which can adapt to restraint. So in this is still that tearing, rising or falling, ascending, descending. And you have to basically know the difference between when to seize an opportunity, rise, or contract. And honor the restraint or accept the restraint. You don't want to be busting through restraints that are not logical, not warranted, or not right action for you. But you do want to seize opportunities. So we're ready for our solution slide. So in the meantime, take a nice deep breath as I get things set up and go within. We're looking at inner peace. Inner peace is probably the highest form of ascension especially for ego in today's day and age. So if you're interested in taking that journey, innerzension.com, innerzension.com. All right. Here is the influence. This is for the week of the 12th through the 18th, 2022. It's a week that might feel like it's headed towards a cliff, but something inside you feels the deeper phoenix starting to push upward. You might feel isolated this week as Venus starts a fight against Uranus while conjuncting Saturn. Although it will feel harder to relate to others, Mars and Mercury turn direct. So the individual way ahead seems clearer and easier to manage and set some goals. And here's the overall solution. Remember, here's what's going into our calculations. We have the I-Ching 7, organized discipline, focus on leadership, followership continuum, but also honor solidarity, focus on solidarity. And that could be difficult for you when you have Venus in a conflict with Uranus, especially if you're an Aquarian like me, but also with ego, scared, ego potentially frightful. So you kind of want to push people away, but don't. We got solidarity is the key here. Where we go one, we go all. And we have Rave Mandala, decisiveness, remember, energy, which can adapt to restraint, to accept restraint, or seize opportunities. And the key is to know the difference. Now, here's Sagittarius, expansive and free, but can capitalize on opportunities, can impulsively, boom, go get opportunities. Right? So how do we deal with that? So you got Sagittarius, very impulsive, and you have Rave that says, you need to make sure that you do right action. And so we got some issues there. So here's our triangulation. The universe cautions against just completely turning off to the outside world. Even though it's hard to relate to others, always remember that you're a key part of the greater collective. Remember that we are one at a deep layer underneath. And once you have that down, the rest really is individually opportunistic. The combination between expansive, wise, optimistic Sagittarius and the decisive line 2 of Rave Gate 60 means that you need to slow down to assess restraint levels. That'll be the hardest solution for the Sagittarius action here. But you have to slow down so that you can assess right action. With Mars going direct, it might be easy to invoke the unbridled Sag energy and just bolt forward without thinking. This is unwise from the Rave. Yes, move forward, seize opportunities, conquer your world, but do so initially slowly, just initially, to ensure that this is the right move for you in that moment. Once that is satisfied, bolting forward is indicated. All right. And the mantra that I've chosen to select for myself includes basically all of that. Above all, I am one with all my other selves. I am one with all. I pause when assessing right action, but then I pounce on right opportunities. So I take a pause when I see an opportunity and I go towards it slowly, pause, feel, is it right action or is this just ego wanting? If it's right, go seize it and don't think twice. Okay, so you can still be impulsive, but as long as you have that initial pause, assessment. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Please put your comments down below about what makes sense for 2000. It's a big move for us. And welcome to all you new folks here. If you'd rather stay on Rumble or BitChute, subscribe. We're seeing a lot of flow in these videos, and so I want to welcome you. Give me an up arrow if this was of use for you. And we'll see you next week for another CIRF report. Thanks, everybody.